She shouldn't be able to move, Zarkon. Why is she moving? Senior Inspector Plex hissed at me, mandibles clicking in that nervous way that always made my thorax itch. I adjusted the restraint panel again, triple-checking the settings. The human female sat across from us, separated by an energy barrier that should have been impenetrable. Her lips curled upward in that unsettling expression humans call a smile. The motion exposed her blunt teeth, which any rational species would recognize as a non-threatening display. But something about her calm demeanor made my exoskeleton feel 2 sizes too small. "The paralytic compound is at maximum strength, Inspector," I replied, trying to keep the uncertainty from my voice. "It's enough to immobilize a crawl beast. Perhaps humans have some natural immunity?" The inspector's compound eyes narrowed to pinpoints. Very impossible. Our intelligence reports indicate humans are soft, fragile creatures. Their planet is barely habitable, high-gravity, corrosive atmosphere, deadly radiation from their sun. They shouldn't even be able to survive space travel, let alone resist our most potent restraints. The human female cleared her throat. A completely unnecessary biological function that I had learned was often used by humans to gain attention. It worked. "You do realize I can hear everything you are saying, right?" she said, her voice carrying a lilt that my translator identified as sarcasm. "Also, your paralytic compound feels like a mild muscle relaxant. Kind of nice after being crammed in that tiny cell for 3 days. She rolled her shoulders, the movement causing both me and the inspector to step backward involuntarily. The motion detectors should have triggered additional restraints. They didn't. "Zarkon," the inspector whispered. "How does she know our language?" Universal translator, the human replied before I could. "Standard issue for all Alliance reconnaissance personnel. Though your dialect has some interesting quirks, my unit is still processing." I quickly checked the security feeds. "Inspector, she shouldn't have any technology." We scanned her thoroughly during capture and intake. The human laughed. It was a sound that sent vibrations through my sensory filaments in a most unpleasant way. Nanoscale tech, integrated with my nervous system. "You can't detect it because it's biologically shielded. Thought you guys would know that, being so advanced and all." Another one of those expressions, my translator labeled it as mockery. Enough. The inspector slammed a manipulator appendage against the control panel. "You will answer our questions, human. Why were you on Outpost Station K8? What intelligence were you gathering? What are the Alliance's plans for the Viridian sector?" The human female leaned forward, and I noticed something that made my hemolymph run cold. The restraint indicators on my panel were all green, showing optimal function, but her movements were completely uninhibited. "My name is Lieutenant Tara Jackson, Alliance Special Operations," she said calmly. "And you are right to be worried." The Inspector Plex's antennae quivered with indignation. "We are the Xanthari Collective. We command the largest battle fleet in 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. We do not worry about solitary humans." Lieutenant Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "That's what the Mexori said too, before we collapsed their quantum defense network. And the Praxians, before we introduced a specialized virus into their hive mind." She paused, that unsettling smile returning. "You have noticed we are a bit resilient, right? There's a reason for that." I couldn't help myself. "What reason?" The inspector shot me a look that promised a thorough reprimand later, but my curiosity circuits were firing too intensely to care. "Earth isn't a disadvantage like you think," Jackson explained, seemingly happy to educate us. "Growing up in high gravity gives us dense muscle tissue. Our corrosive atmosphere means we evolved incredibly efficient filtering systems and robust cellular repair mechanisms. That deadly radiation? It forced our DNA to develop exceptional error correction capabilities." She stretched again, and this time I distinctly heard something in her restraint cuff crack. The security system remained oblivious. "In short," she continued, "we are the cockroaches of sentient species. Nearly impossible to kill, adaptable to almost any environment, and," she winked, Another strange human gesture. We are everywhere. The inspector had heard enough. Secure the prisoner for level 3 interrogation. I want neural probes and memory extraction protocols. 2 guards entered, massive Grox warriors with exoskeletons thick enough to withstand small arms fire. They approached Jackson cautiously, shock prods extended. I wouldn't, she warned, all humor vanishing from her voice. Really wouldn't recommend that approach. The first Grox jabbed his prod forward. What happened next occurred so quickly that my optical receptors barely processed the sequence. Lieutenant Jackson's hand moved in a blur, grasping the prod. Instead of convulsing from the electric charge, she somehow redirected it. The Grox guard dropped, his nervous system temporarily overloaded. The second guard launched himself at her with surprising speed for his bulk. Jackson simply shifted her weight, used the guard's momentum against him, and sent him crashing into the energy barrier. The barrier, designed to keep prisoners in, reacted violently to the impact from the outside, sending feedback surges through the entire security system. Alarms blared. Emergency lights bathed the interrogation room in pulsing crimson. And Lieutenant Tara Jackson stood freely beside the interrogation chair, restraints hanging broken from her wrists. Now, she said pleasantly, as if we were discussing meteorological conditions rather than a catastrophic security breach, let's have an actual conversation. Inspector Plex reached for the emergency signal on his uniform. Jackson moved again, covering the distance between them in what seemed like a single bound. She didn't attack. She simply placed her hand over his, preventing him from activating the signal. Like I said, conversation first, panic later. Her grip appeared gentle, but the inspector couldn't break free despite his considerably larger size. I stood frozen, my analytical mind racing through scenarios, each worse than the last. What do you want? I finally managed to ask. Jackson released the inspector, who stumbled back against the wall. First, I want you to understand something fundamental about humans. She began pacing the room, examining our technology with casual interest. We are not just physically adapted to harsh conditions. Our entire psychology evolved from being prey animals that became apex predators through sheer resourcefulness. She picked up a data tablet, glanced at it, then set it down. Second, I want you to stop your military advance into the Viridian sector. It's neutral space, and the Alliance wants to keep it that way. Inspector Plex found his courage again. The Collective doesn't negotiate with spies and saboteurs. This facility is one of many. You may have overcome your immediate guards, but you are still trapped on a planet with 10 million Xanthari citizens and a planetary defense grid. Jackson sighed, the sound carrying a weight of genuine disappointment. But that's the problem with species that evolved from hive structures. You think in absolutes, numbers, overwhelming force. She tapped her temple. While I was sitting here letting you think you were interrogating me, I was broadcasting everything through my neural implant. My internal alarm sensors went haywire. Broadcasting to whom? For the first time, Lieutenant Jackson's expression showed something other than confidence or amusement. Something that made my survival instincts scream. To the other 17 human operatives who infiltrated your world 3 standard months ago, she replied. To the Alliance fleet holding position just outside your sensor grid. And to these, she held up her hand. Beneath the skin of her palm, something moved. Tiny shapes, barely visible, swarmed to the surface of her skin and then detached, floating into the air around us. Microscale drones, she explained. Been releasing them since I arrived. They are throughout your facility now. Some gather intelligence. Some compromise security systems, as if to demonstrate. The door to the interrogation room slid open without any authorization code. And some, she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, can reconfigure themselves into rather efficient explosive devices if necessary. The inspector's color shifted to the pale blue of extreme distress. You are bluffing. Such technology is theoretical at best. Want to test that theory? Jackson asked. Or would you prefer to contact your central command and explain that your entire planetary defense system has been compromised because you decided to capture an Alliance recon operative instead of just shooing her away from your outpost like civilized people would? I found myself involuntarily calculating the probability that she was telling the truth. The numbers weren't in our favor. Your species is so fixated on cataloging strengths and weaknesses, Jackson continued, now leaning casually against the wall. You look at humans and see fragile bodies, short lifespans, limited natural weapons. What you miss is that these weaknesses drove us to develop strengths you can't easily quantify: creativity, adaptability, ruthless determination when threatened. The control panel behind her sparked suddenly, making me jump. The facility's lighting flickered. That would be my teammates, she explained helpfully. They are probably getting impatient. It doesn't take this long for a standard infiltration extraction, but I wanted to chat. Call it professional curiosity. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely audible over the increasingly frantic alarm systems. Lieutenant Jackson straightened up. Now I'm going to walk out of here. Your guards will inexplicably find themselves responding to emergencies in other sectors. System malfunctions will erase all data regarding my captivity. And you too are going to take a message back to your superiors. What message? The inspector asked, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Jackson's expression became deadly serious. Humanity isn't interested in conquest. We maintain the Alliance to ensure peaceful coexistence among species. But we have learned through painful experience that some species only understand deterrence. She stepped close to us again, and though she stood a full head shorter than either of us, something in her posture made her seem like the largest presence in the room. The message is simple. The Viridian sector remains neutral territory. Any military assets you move there will disappear without explanation. Any aggressive action will be met with proportional response. And if you ever capture another human, her smile returned, but there was nothing friendly about it. We won't be nearly as pleasant about it. A series of explosions echoed from somewhere deep in the facility, right on cue. That's my ride, Jackson said. I suggest you both find somewhere safe to wait this out. It's going to get a bit chaotic. The lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, but Lieutenant Tara Jackson was already gone. Inspector Plex turned to me, his exoskeleton nearly rattling with rage and fear. This is your fault, Zarkon. You recommended capturing her instead of eliminating her on sight. I couldn't argue. I had made that recommendation based on careful analysis of human physiological data. All that data, it seemed, had been catastrophically incomplete. What do we do now? I asked. Before the inspector could respond, his communication implant chimed. His eyes widened as he received the message. Central Command is reporting simultaneous security breaches at 27 critical facilities across the planet, he whispered. Defense grids, communication arrays, atmospheric regulators. Or another explosion, much closer this time, shook the room. Through the open door, I could see Xanthari personnel running in panic. Inspector, I said carefully, I believe we should deliver Lieutenant Jackson's message to the Collective Council immediately. He nodded numbly. And recommend immediate withdrawal from Viridian space. As we hurried through corridors filled with smoke and confusion, I found myself profoundly rewriting my understanding of the universe and our place in it. The Collective had always classified species by measurable traits: strength, speed, technological achievement, reproductive capacity. We had classified humans as a curiosity, an improbable species from an inhospitable world, possessing moderate intelligence but limited physical capabilities. How terribly, dangerously wrong we had been. The building shook again. Through a viewport, I caught a glimpse of the night sky. Something massive was occurring in orbit, flashes of light too rhythmic to be natural phenomena. One thought repeated in my mind: the interrogation room couldn't hold her. And I was beginning to suspect that neither could our planet. 3 standard days after what was now being called the incident, I found myself in an unprecedented position. Rather than being demoted or executed for my failure, I had been temporarily elevated to the rank of special diplomatic envoy. "This is absolutely ridiculous," I muttered, adjusting the ceremonial mantle that kept slipping off my thoracic plates. "I'm an analyst, not a negotiator." Beside me, my newly assigned assistant, Junior Coordinator Vix, pretended not to hear my complaint. Her bright yellow carapace was polished to a shine that hurt my optical receptors when the shuttle's lighting hit it just right. "The Council believes your direct experience with the human will be valuable," she replied diplomatically. "You survived an encounter with her. That makes you something of an expert." "I survived because she allowed it," I reminded her. "There's a difference." Our shuttle approached the designated meeting coordinates in the Viridian neutral zone. The massive Alliance vessel waiting for us dwarfed our diplomatic craft in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. Its hull was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making it appear like a void against the backdrop of stars. Receiving transmission from Alliance vessel, our pilot announced, "They are requesting that Special Envoy Zarkon come alone." Coordinator Vix's antennae shot up in alarm. "Absolutely not. Protocol requires a minimum diplomatic contingent of 3 representatives." I rose from my seat. "And yet, I will be going alone." "As requested." "Envoy Zarkon," she protested, "the Council will never." "The Council is desperate," I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. The human was correct. 17 infiltrators managed to disable our entire planetary defense network, critical infrastructure controls, and main communication grid. They could have destroyed our civilization on Outpost Praxis. Instead, they delivered a message and left. I adjusted my mantle again. If the Alliance wanted me dead, we'd already be space debris. The shuttle docked with the Alliance vessel with a gentle shudder. As the airlock cycled, I took a deep breath of our atmospheric mix, knowing the Alliance ship would be calibrated to human preferences. To my surprise, when the door opened, the air that rushed in was perfectly balanced for Xanthari physiology. Standing in the doorway was Lieutenant Tara Jackson, now dressed in the formal blue and silver uniform of the Alliance, rather than the nondescript capture garments we had provided her. Inspector Zarkon, she greeted me with that same unsettling smile. "Or should I say Special Envoy?" "Lieutenant Jackson," I replied, stepping through the airlock. "I see you have been promoted as well." "Actually, I was always a commander." "Lieutenant was my cover rank," she corrected, gesturing for me to follow her down a corridor lined with what I recognized as various Alliance species security personnel. "Thanks for coming alone. Makes this all much simpler." The corridor opened into a large conference room. The lighting, temperature, and furnishings had been precisely calibrated for Xanthari comfort, knowledge that would have required extensive research into our biological needs. "How long has the Alliance been studying us?" I asked, unable to contain my analyst's curiosity. Commander Jackson laughed. "That's your first question? Not what happens next. Not whether your civilization is about to be dismantled." She indicated a seat designed for Xanthari physiology. "Please make yourself comfortable." As I settled into the seat, I noticed other doors around the conference room opening. 5 humans entered, along with representatives from 3 other Alliance species. They took seats around the large table without introduction. An older human male with silver fur on his face, my translator identified this as a beard, spoke first. "I'm Admiral Feng, Alliance Diplomatic Corps. You have already met Commander Jackson. The others don't matter for now." I bristled at the casual dismissal. In the collective, all participants in a negotiation are identified. "This isn't a negotiation," Admiral Feng replied coldly. "This is a briefing. You are here to receive information, not to bargain." Commander Jackson cleared her throat. "Admiral, with respect, perhaps we could be more accommodating. Envoy Zarkon did recommend my capture rather than immediate elimination when I was detected. That suggests a certain pragmatism worth acknowledging." The Admiral's expression remained stern, but he nodded slightly. Very well. The representatives present are from the founding alliance species. Commander Jackson will conduct this meeting as she has first-hand knowledge of your people. Jackson tapped a control and a holographic display appeared above the table, showing a map of nearby space, including Xanthari territory and the contested Viridian sector. Your people have expanded through this region for the past 80 years, she began. 27 inhabited worlds, 412 outposts, mining operations on 73 non-habitable planets. Impressive growth. The collective plans for the long term, I responded carefully. And yet, Jackson continued, your expansion has begun to strain your ability to maintain cohesion. Your frontier outposts, like Praxis, are understaffed. Your supply lines are stretched. Your military vessels are impressive but aging. I kept my posture neutral despite my shock at their level of intelligence. Are you suggesting the collective is vulnerable? I'm suggesting, Jackson replied, leaning forward, that you don't need to expand into Viridian space. You are doing it because your social structure demands constant growth to maintain stability. But that growth is becoming unsustainable. Another human, a female with dark skin and striking white hair, joined the conversation. Your civilization follows a pattern we have seen before. Derived species develop rigid hierarchies that require expansion to prevent internal conflict. But there's a mathematical limit to how far you can extend before collapse becomes inevitable. We are not some simple biological algorithm for you to decode, I protested, feeling genuinely offended. The collective has thrived for millennia. In a relatively small region of space, Jackson pointed out. Until recently, you never encountered another spacefaring species capable of opposing you. Now you have. Admiral Feng spoke again. Let's be direct. We don't want conflict with the Xanthari collective. We don't want your territory. We don't even particularly care about your social structure or governance. But the Viridian sector will remain neutral space. I took a moment to process this. The directness was unexpected but refreshing after the circular discussions of the collective council. What happens if we refuse? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Commander Jackson smiled, but this time it didn't seem threatening. It seemed almost sad. The demonstration on Praxis was minimal. 17 operatives, limited equipment, non-lethal protocols. It took 3 months of careful work. The holographic display shifted to show images of key Xanthari worlds. Red points appeared on each, dozens on the core worlds, hundreds on the frontier. We currently have 23 operatives on each of your major worlds, she continued. They have been there for years. Some hold positions in your government. Some are merchants. Some are maintenance workers with access to critical systems. My hemolymph ran cold. Impossible. Humans cannot disguise themselves as Xanthari. The white-haired human tapped a control. A section of her arm seemed to shimmer, then transform, the skin tone and texture changing to perfectly mimic Xanthari exoskeleton. Adaptive camouflage technology, Jackson explained. Combined with behavioral mimicry training, your society's rigidity makes it surprisingly easy to infiltrate. You expect conformity, so you rarely question individuals who follow prescribed behaviors. Admiral Feng leaned forward. But again, we don't want conflict. We want stability. The alliance functions by creating balanced regions where trade and cultural exchange can thrive without military posturing. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked. A treaty, Jackson replied. Formal recognition of Viridian space as a neutral zone, establishment of trade protocols, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation where mutually beneficial. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound making several alliance members visibly uncomfortable. You infiltrate our worlds, compromise our security, threaten our existence, and then offer trade agreements. Yes, Jackson said simply. Because humans learned something painful during our early development. Victory through destruction is temporary. True victory comes through connection. That sounds suspiciously like assimilation, I observed. No, the Admiral cut in. It's coexistence. Your civilization values order and efficiency. Ours values diversity and adaptation. There's no reason these approaches must conflict. Commander Jackson stood and walked around the table until she stood beside me. Without asking permission, she activated a small device that projected new images, Xanthari and humans working together on various projects, along with other species I recognized from Alliance worlds. These aren't simulations, she explained. These are actual cooperation initiatives already underway on frontier worlds where our territories meet informally. Your people trading technology for raw materials, cultural festivals where your philosophers discuss cosmic harmony with ours. I studied the images carefully, looking for signs of manipulation. The Collective Council has no knowledge of these interactions. Because your frontier governors don't report them, Jackson said. They have discovered something your central authority fears, that contact with other species doesn't lead to contamination or weakness. It leads to new strengths. One image expanded to fill the display, a Xanthari scientist and a human engineer standing proudly beside some sort of hybrid technology. This, Jackson continued, is a water purification system that combines Xanthari mineral filtration techniques with human nanoprocessing. It's 30% more efficient than either approach alone. It's currently providing clean water to 6 frontier colonies. Admiral Feng cleared his throat. The Alliance isn't offering you charity, Envoy Zarkon. We are offering you opportunity. Your civilization has plateaued technologically because your hierarchical structure limits innovation. We advance rapidly because our chaos encourages it. There's a balance to be found that benefits both. I sat silently for several moments, processing everything. My analytical mind was overwhelmed by the implications, the possibilities, the threats, and the opportunities all competing for evaluation. The Collective Council will never accept direct Alliance presence in our territory, I finally said. We are not asking for that, Jackson replied. We are asking for recognition of neutral space and formal diplomatic relations. And if we refuse? The white-haired human smiled thinly. Then nothing happens immediately. But over time, your frontier colonies will increasingly interact with Alliance worlds anyway. Your governors will continue to hide these interactions. The division between core and frontier will widen. And within approximately 27 years, your collective will fracture from within. I stared at her. That's suspiciously precise. We run simulations, she replied with a shrug. Thousands of them, with every variable we can identify. The pattern is remarkably consistent. Jackson placed a data crystal on the table. Everything we have discussed is here, along with our formal proposal. Take it back to your council. They don't need to trust us. They just need to calculate the probabilities, as you are doing right now. Admiral Feng stood, signaling the meeting was concluding. Commander Jackson will escort you back to your shuttle. You have 15 standard days to provide an initial response. As we walked back through the corridor, I found myself struggling with questions I had never considered before. Jackson seemed to sense my turmoil. Change is terrifying, she said quietly, especially for a species that values stability above all. But consider this, the universe itself is constantly changing. Perhaps true stability comes from learning to change with it, rather than resisting. At the airlock, I turned to face her. Your demonstration on Praxis. Was it truly just 17 operatives? She smiled enigmatically. What do your analytical instincts tell you? That you wanted us to know exactly what you are capable of, I replied. Which means you either showed us everything, or nothing at all. Jackson laughed. See? This is why I argued against simply eliminating you when we had the chance. You understand nuance. She extended her hand, another human custom my briefing had prepared me for. I carefully touched my manipulator appendage to her palm. The collective has survived this long because we recognize patterns, I said. And right now I recognize that humanity represents a pattern we have never encountered before. That's a start, she replied. 15 days, Envoy Zarkon. I hope to see you again under similarly peaceful circumstances. As I boarded the shuttle, Coordinator Vix bombarded me with questions I barely heard. My mind was racing ahead, already drafting the report I would present to the council. Not the official one, that would be full of diplomatic language and careful recommendations for further study. The real report would be simpler. The humans and their alliance weren't offering us peace or war. They were offering us evolution. And for the first time in my existence, I found myself wondering if the rigid structure of the collective truly represented the pinnacle of civilization, or merely one path among many. As our shuttle pulled away from the imposing Alliance vessel, I watched it through the viewport. In the darkness of space, it seemed to shimmer slightly, its outline becoming momentarily indistinct before resolving again. "Did you see that?" I asked Vix. "See what, envoy?" I stared harder at the ship, but it appeared normal now. Solid. Unchanging. "Nothing," I replied, turning away from the viewport. "Just a trick of the light." But as we accelerated toward home, I couldn't help wondering if what I'd glimpsed was something more. Perhaps the Alliance vessel wasn't simply dark. Perhaps it was something our sensors couldn't properly comprehend. Something that could change its very nature when circumstances required. Much like the humans themselves. The interrogation room couldn't hold her. Their planet couldn't hold her. And I was beginning to suspect that our limited understanding of the universe couldn't hold them either. Which meant the collective had only two options: adapt or become obsolete. I already knew which I would recommend.